Hello, it's good to see so many of you here. My name is Jake Foley. I am one of the admissions officers from Harvard University, specifically from the Harvard College, the undergraduate portion of Harvard. We're really thrilled to be here in Saudi Arabia. We've had a really productive couple of days here at the conference, some great questions. And today we basically want to give you an overview about admissions to universities in the United States, help answer some of your questions, and provide sort of a general outline of what it might be like from start to finish throughout the application process. First, I would love to have my colleagues introduce themselves. Ann?
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Coleman. I'm the director of the Office of International Students and Scholars at Yale University.
Hello, I'm Jordan Pascucci, the Associate Dean of Recruitment at the University of Pennsylvania.
Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Kralik, Assistant Director of Admission at Stanford University.
Good afternoon. My name is Alec Milton. I am Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Columbia University in New York City.
Great. So as I mentioned, we want to start off by talking about admissions to U.S. universities and colleges in a broad way, so that we can give you an overview, again, of what the application process is like, what types of options you might have as university education in the United States. So why might you consider studying in the United States? There are lots of different reasons, and as you will hear in a moment, there are so many different types of institutions available to study at in the United States. But across the board, you will find certain characteristics. First and foremost, diversity. Diversity of all sorts. Socioeconomic diversity, regional geographic diversity, ethnic, cultural diversity, religious diversity, diversity of languages. And that's really one of the main benefits of going to universities that have a global scope. They also will, one of the great benefits to many schools in the United States is the option to study in a liberal arts curriculum. And I would like just to pause here for a moment and ask my colleague from Colombia, Alec, just to explain in a few sentences, what is a liberal arts education? Why might a student from high school who is interested in studying in the United States potentially pursue a liberal arts education? So, Alec?
When I describe the liberal arts education, I like to describe it in a couple of ways. First and foremost, the idea of studying a passion that a student has. And then also the idea that it is a well-rounded education, that you are going to study more than just a particular subject area. And I would even go so far as to say that in many cases, when you look at some of the wonderful alumni that have graduated from our institutions, what they studied as undergraduates oftentimes had nothing to do with the particular career or fame that particular alumni wound up having. So the idea that you come and you study a passion, that you have a life outside of the classroom, those things are just as important to us as the education that you're getting with a professor in a laboratory, things like that. So a broad-based education, studying something that you are particularly intellectually passionate about.
Great. And you can see here on the third bullet point, the residential and student life aspect to many colleges and universities in the United States. People are often surprised when I ask students at Harvard, undergraduate students, how they spend their time. It's surprising because many students spend 20, 30% of their time preparing for their assignments, going to class, doing the readings. But the college experience in the United States, especially at residential colleges, is so much more than that. So, Joe, from Stanford, if you'd like to talk a little bit about what might a student expect at a residential college and maybe just expand upon life outside the classroom a little bit.
So one of the massive benefits, I think, of U.S. colleges and universities, in many respects, are the chances to live on campus and live with your peers. Spending 4-ish years away at a college or university in the United States is an invaluable experience. Many of the residence halls on campus have programming to supplement and complement your undergraduate education. You're going to have social nights, cultural nights, academic nights, and oftentimes we hear from our students that they learn more, or certainly just as much outside the classroom as they're learning inside the lecture hall. In terms of residential campuses, it's also important to note that when you do have opportunities that are outside of the classroom, many of our campuses allow students to just walk a couple hundred meters across campus and be at that event. So residential colleges allow students to be fully immersed in the learning experience, which is something that really we hear from our students is a big, big part of their undergraduate experience.
And the last point on this slide, as you can see, refers to the cost. Many schools in the United States have financial aid available, scholarships available. This is probably an area that you will find extreme variety in terms of what's available to students, particularly international students. And near the end of this presentation, we'll go into a little bit more detail about how you might finance the education. One thing to note, though, is that oftentimes what you see on the website as the price, like the sticker price, is not actually what you will be paying because of these opportunities to get funding. So here on this slide, these are just some things that we came up with that are topics that you might want to consider when you're looking across the board at colleges and universities. I think some of these bullet points might be good to keep in mind as you walk through the conference and chat with the different representatives that are here. So obviously you want to think of your field of study, make sure that the university that you're looking at has the field that you're interested in. You may also consider things like the location, the cost of attendance, as we mentioned, if scholarships are available, what resources are available, the academic and the social experience, sort of what Joe was touching on earlier. On the previous slide, over 4,000 schools and universities, there's a massive variety. So those include anything from community colleges and technical colleges to state-run public universities that can be oftentimes many, very, very large, drawing people from all over a certain state in the United States and also around the world, to private universities, such as ourselves. Jordan, if you'd like to just talk about, you can see on this first bullet point, undergraduate as opposed to graduate degrees. If you just want to expand on that and talk about the different options for undergraduate study, postgraduate study, specialization after your bachelor's degree, what does that all entail?
I think at the undergraduate level is what really makes the United States system of higher education unique, because at the undergraduate level, students are typically spending 4 full years on campuses where they're both living and learning, and they're studying a wide variety of subjects. So even if they're specifically interested in engineering, in the United States, the way that the system is set up, students have to be exposed to many different areas, which is a good thing, because I think that even if you have a particular area of study, the world is changing so fast that fields of engineering that exist today wouldn't have existed 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and the same will be true 5 years into the future. And so the system of education in the United States at the undergraduate level is really distinctive because it offers the breadth of subjects as well as the specialization. We represent 5 highly selective private universities that are also research-based. And many times when you hear universities in the United States talk about research, it means that they expect you to be actively involved in the creation of new knowledge, and so doing your own investigations, being innovative in whatever areas that you're interested in studying. So that's something that you're doing alongside the coursework, that it's just not taking classes at an undergraduate level, but it's also being a researcher, applying your knowledge and the things that you're learning outside of the classroom in different activities. At a graduate level, that's really where you're going to narrow and specialize, and that's where things that are going to be much more applicable to perhaps a specific career or one distinct subject, whereas at an undergraduate level, even if you have one subject in mind, it's going to be much broader.
Great. And I think one important point about choosing a college or university in the United States is this last last portion that talks about the overall experience. And I would love if you could just expand on that. Do international students have the same opportunities to fully participate in the life of the college and the university?
Absolutely. There, as my colleagues alluded, there's a lot more to studying in the United States, particularly at the undergraduate level, than the classroom and the research and the lab experience. The extracurriculars, as we refer to, life is very rich. Student organizations exist of all kinds. I think at Yale we have over 400 student organizations, and they're based on religious affinities, national affinities, particular interests. We have drama, music, performance. We have a lot of students engaged in community service, and I think which means working, volunteering in the community around the university. And I think that is one of the great benefits for international students, because you again get to experience the American culture and American life beyond the academic world. So there are just plenty of opportunities. The other one I would mention is student leadership. So in all of these organizations have the opportunity to be the president, to be the social chair, and so there's great attention paid to developing the leadership skills of students, and particularly as it relates to the extracurricular activities.
So now we'll sort of move into the application review process and some things to consider. Specifically, we'll jump right into the different exam requirements, the different components of a typical application to U.S. institutions, and how you might go about searching for financial aid and scholarships. So the first thing that we've been getting a lot of questions about the different types of exams, because across the world, depending on the type of university, there are different types of testing requirements. So Alec, do you want to start us off by talking a little bit about some of the typical testing requirements at U.S. schools?
Okay, so at U.S. schools, you'll have a variety of testing requirements. Most likely, if you go to a school where the language of instruction is not in English, they're going to require TOEFL or IELTS exam. Most universities in the United States will also require the SAT or the ACT. Where we look at that essentially as a general reasoning test to get a sense for how well a student might do within their first year. There are also subject tests that are available where students can sort of, I like to say, put their best foot forward within the area of one particular subject. It could be the social sciences, math, the STEM fields, taking math, physics, or chemistry. In general, we look at these tests separately than we look at students' GPA or their coursework, but they are still very, very important to our application process and the overall evaluation process. Schools like ours will use the tests, the standardized tests, within the context of an overall application, this idea of holistic admissions, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's going to be one component of a pretty rigorous application process.
And you can see we have some advice about how many schools you may wish to apply to, and this is obviously not a firm rule by any means. It's a recommendation. I think it's a reflection of the idea of applying to reach schools, dream schools, and more schools that you think you have a very solid chance of being accepted. Joe, you want to expand on that? What type of advice might you give someone to ask an international student who asks how many schools in the U.S. Should I apply to?
Sure. So I think there are a couple ways of approaching this. We represent 5 very highly selective colleges and universities, meaning that we receive thousands of applications, of qualified applications, for just usually a couple thousand spots each year. So that means that we must turn away many highly qualified applicants, and that's just the nature of what we do based on size limitations. We have X number of beds on our campuses. That being said, I think it's really important to select the colleges and universities in the United States, over a wide net, meaning that when you're looking at where you may want to study, look at colleges with different levels of selectivity. I think that if someone were to apply to all 5 of these schools with very low admit rates, that would not be advisable based sheerly on numbers. I think that if you look at the over 4,000 colleges and universities in the U.S. And look at the various tremendous opportunities at these schools, you can really work on creating an informed, a reasonable, and a diverse list of colleges that you would like to apply to. Jordan, my colleague Jordan, actually has a great insight on fit, and I think that that's a concept that you can consider as well. Jordan?
Sure. So the idea of fit comes down to what are you looking for, what do you want to get out of an institution, and how do you see yourself contributing? And thinking about the environment, the size, the city, the location, the weather, all sorts of things will be important, but also the selectivity. And I think that that will really determine how many schools you need to apply to. Because the more selective a school, obviously your chances of admissions just statistically become a little bit more reduced. And you want to be wise about making sure that your academic record is a match for what that university is looking for first. And then it comes to all of the other things that we're going to talk about.
Great, and I think we can move right along to talk about the holistic review. Before we do, these last 2 bullet points are just some things you may want to keep in mind before you start the application process. You'll be preparing an essay in English, as well as the rest of the application in English. And if you have official documents that are required in your native language in Arabic, you can have those translated and submitted with your application. But we've used the term holistic a couple of times. And that's how we evaluate applications. We look at a variety of components, including the academic record, the extracurricular activities, the essays, your letters of recommendation, references from your teachers that you've worked with. Alec, holistic admissions, how would you summarize that sort of just in a few sentences?
Sure. The way that I describe the holistic admissions process is that there's really no one piece of the application that schools like ours are going to look at and say we need to admit this particular student. First and foremost, we are academic institutions, so we're looking certainly at academic performance within a particular curriculum, within the classes, then the rigor of those classes that you're taking. But your life outside of the classroom is just as important to us. So we're going to look at those factors as well. We're going to listen to what people say about you in terms of your letters of recommendation. We're going to look at what do you say about yourself? What are some of the interests and the passions that you have? And how have you found a way to fulfill all of those passions over the course of your high school career? So when we look at all of those things and we put them together in what we call a holistic process, it gives us sort of an imagination of what you might look like on our campuses, and imagining that you're going to grow and change over that 4-year period as well. But just the idea that there are many different parts of the application, and I would say that for the level of selectivity that's on this panel this afternoon, every single one of those parts of the application are just as important as other parts of the application. So a student can have great testing, but if they're not one of the stronger students in their school community, if they're not performing well in the classroom, if teachers don't speak well to their contributions to the classroom and to the school community, we might say that that's not a good fit for us. So there are many of those different factors that we look at when we put the different parts of the application together.
And Joe, if someone walks up to the Stanford booth and says, what should I write my essay about? How would you answer that question?
That in fact has happened, Jake. I think that this opens up an interesting question because, as Alec mentioned, the essay very well could be the most important part of your application, as could every other component. So it's really critical to think about how you want to represent yourself in prose in your file. We could sit up here and talk about the best essays that we've read, and I think that what would happen most likely is that we'd receive more of those exact essays in the coming years. So I think that really the best way that you can think about representing yourself in this essay is to really be reflective and to write about yourself. It's very much a process where we're receiving, like I mentioned, thousands of applications. And if I say to write an essay about your favorite co-curricular activity, I'm going to end up reading hundreds of the same essay. So if I tell you to write an essay about yourself and you're truly reflective and you write about your unique being, I think that in those cases, that's going to be a unique essay. And that's going to stand out to the admission committee, it's going to stand out in our process, and it's going to best represent you throughout our entire admission evaluation.
Great. So you can see on the third bullet point the importance of English proficiency. And I would love if you could just elaborate on that. What sort of is required to be able to fully participate in the academic and social life of these colleges and universities?
I think there are two elements to that. One is what are the test scores that are required for admission, and I think each of our schools will have fairly high English requirements. And that's important for reasons both within the classroom and outside the classroom. Within the classroom, the pace of the coursework at our schools is very, very quick. There's a lot of reading assignments. There are written assignments on a regular basis. We don't evaluate at the end of a course. We evaluate throughout the course. And the American system has a lot of small classes. So in those classes, you're expected to participate, and part of your scoring on that class, part of your grading, is your classroom participation. So you need very solid English for all of those things. Admittedly, if you've never studied in English, it takes you a little while, even if you test beautifully, it takes a little while to come up to speed to that. But those are expectations of all students as they enter their first year of study. Outside the classroom, the English language is important because one of your goals in coming to the United States or studying outside your home country is to engage with people from that country. So you want to be able to have easy, casual conversations if you're in the United States with American students. So you are going to be using a slightly different kind of English outside the classroom, and that's an English that you will pick up as you spend more time there. The other thing I think, when I welcome new students, one of the important things is that as you come to the United States, you are also teachers. You have the opportunity to teach our students, our faculties, our communities about life in Saudi Arabia. You have the opportunity to make clarifications. We most likely have misunderstandings. And so having good English conversational skills lets you sort of represent your country also.
So at this moment, we will just take a couple of minutes each to give you just a very brief overview about each of our colleges and universities. The reason we'll keep it brief is because we will try and get to a question and answer portion. If you have any specific questions about the admissions process in general to these types of selective schools, there'll be plenty of time at the conclusion to ask those questions. But Alec, if you want to start us off by telling us a little bit about Columbia.
Sure. Columbia's undergraduate school is pretty famous. It's started in New York. It's the first school that was established in the state of New York. One of the things that I think is really important to know and understand about the school is certainly our location, but our residential experience in New York City. We guarantee housing all 4 years for that undergraduate population. Our students are integrated in New York City, but as you see by the picture above us, New York City doesn't take over our school. New York City doesn't take over our campus. It's a great learning opportunity. It's a great playground, a great place for internships. A great place to grow up in a lot of ways, but this particular campus here in the Morningside Heights neighborhood is the centerpiece of who we are. I think the other thing to really know and understand that's important to us is our educational philosophy. We think that a well-educated person has read certain books and tackled certain ideas, no matter what their major is, no matter what their career interests are. So if you are interested in an undergraduate education at Columbia University, I would encourage you to get to know our core curriculum. It is a great books program that starts with the Iliad and the Odyssey and makes its way down to modern and contemporary literature. And it's a great books class that you read in your first year. In your sophomore year, great social, political, philosophic ideas. You read some of the Old and New Testaments of the Bible. You read some of the Quran. And you read about these ideas that are still helping the world turn today. So that's important to us, and you're going to study these books if you're a physics major, an engineering major, an arts major, a filmmaker, whatever walk of life you're thinking about entering in.
All right, so I would love to just tell you a little bit about Harvard University and Harvard College in just in a couple of minutes. There's a lot that I could say because Harvard University is quite large because it includes many, many schools. It includes the law school, the business school, the medical school. Those are the professional graduate level schools. These are schools that you may attend after you complete your bachelor's degree. Anyone who is at Harvard as an undergraduate is at Harvard College. Sometimes people are confused the difference between Harvard College and Harvard University. But the college is the undergraduate portion, and there are lots of things for you to study at Harvard in the liberal arts curriculum. What do we have? We have 47 different concentrations or majors in areas in the natural science, physical science, engineering sciences. Computer science is the fastest growing concentration at Harvard. The social sciences are very strong as well. Government economics are some of our most popular concentrations every year, and also the humanities. These have been studied at Harvard since 1636 when Harvard was founded, the oldest university in the United States. On this slide here, I chose this picture because it gives, this is the Charles River, which separates Boston, the city of Boston on the east coast of the United States, from the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, where Harvard College is located. I also chose this slide for selfish reasons because you can see the white tower peeking out sort of in the middle of the slide. That's one of the 12 upper-class houses at Harvard. It's where I spent my 3 years after my freshman year in Eliot House, one of the 12 upper-class houses. And that's one of our residential colleges where you are placed after your first year, and there are about 350 to 500 people in size. This is really where a lot of the discussions happen with your peers. As I mentioned, at all of these schools, students come from all over the world, from all sorts of different backgrounds. And I think you probably have heard that schools like Harvard have tremendous financial resources, physical resources like libraries, museums, research institutes of all varieties. But by far, the greatest resource that we have at Harvard is the community of students that we're able to assemble in Cambridge. And we want to bring the best possible students to Cambridge every year to join the freshman class, completely regardless of their family's ability to pay for that education. For that reason, every year we spend close to $180 million on financial aid, trying to attract the best and brightest from around the world. So that's sort of Harvard in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any other questions at our booth later on today. But next, we move on to the University of Pennsylvania. So Jordan.
Sure. So with Harvard College being the oldest college in the United States, the University of Pennsylvania is America's first university. We are an Ivy League school located in the city of Philadelphia. We're a private university. Philadelphia is America's 5th largest city. We're on the East Coast, located just about an hour and 25 minutes from New York and about 2 hours from Washington, D.C. So you experience all 4 seasons on our campus. We have a campus that is right in the middle of the city of Philadelphia, and from one end of Center City to the other is only 5 kilometers, so it's very easy to walk around and get from one place to another. All of the buildings on our campus are just within 5 minutes walking of each other. We have 4 undergraduate schools, 12 graduate schools, 164 research centers, 4 nationally ranked teaching hospitals, 12 art galleries, 2 museums, lots of athletic fields. So there's plenty of things to do. The 4 undergraduate schools that students choose from include our College of Arts and Sciences, the Wharton School of Business, the School of Engineering and Applied Science, and the School of Nursing. It's an excellent place for people who are considering engineering. There's a lot of diversity of fields. We just opened a nanotechnology center. We have a haptics laboratory. We're also proudly 40% women in the School of Engineering. We also, in business, about half of our students are actually women studying to be future business leaders all around the world. So students can choose from a variety of subjects. We have 92 different majors at an undergraduate level. The campus is 20% international. We have students coming from 109 countries and 137 citizenships.
And Joe, how about Stanford?
Sure. So Stanford University is located in Palo Alto, California, just south of the city of San Francisco and north of the city of San Jose. We're actually located right in the middle of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley and Stanford actually kind of grew up together, and many of the individuals and companies that make Silicon Valley relevant, in fact, did come out of Stanford. Stanford occupies a very large campus, over 8,000 U.S. acres on the campus, making it the largest contiguous college campus in the United States. Luckily, we only have about 1/3 developed, so it's not too far to get from point A to point B. I will say, though, that creates tremendous recreational opportunities for our students. You can go swimming, fishing, hiking, camping, all without leaving Stanford University. As high school students or secondary school students, it's important to know that you do not apply to a specific major or school at Stanford. In fact, you apply just to the university. Once you're on campus, you have all the resources and departments of the university open to you, and you have the academic freedom to explore and choose your major by the end of your second year. This allows our students to double major, pick a minor, or pick up a co-term program, which is a bachelor's and a master's degree in just 5 years at a very high rate.
Excellent. And to finish the school descriptions off, Anne, tell us a little bit about Yale.
So Yale University is located in New Haven, Connecticut, which is a medium-sized city. We're on the East Coast, about 60 miles north of New York City and about 100 miles south of Boston. So it's a very nice location. We're kind of close to a beach and near the mountains. Yale University, while not the oldest university or oldest college, we were founded in 1701 before America's independence. So we have more than 300 years of experience in educating students. Currently, we have about a little over 11,000 students. Half of those students are studying for their first degree, their undergraduate degree at Yale College. And the other half are pursuing PhDs, master's degrees, and professional degrees in one of our 10 professional schools. So, like my colleagues, those schools include law, medicine, nursing, fine arts, divinity, forestry and environmental science, and a handful of others. At the undergraduate level, you apply to Yale College. It's a liberal arts curriculum offering nearly 50 different majors ranging from the humanities, social sciences, engineering, all STEM fields. We do require students to take a core curriculum. So in your first 2 years, you're doing some exploration, as well as beginning to focus on what you eventually think your major will be. One of the features that attracts undergraduates to Yale College is our residential college system. We have 12 residential colleges, and as students are admitted, they're randomly assigned to one of those colleges, and that becomes their home away from home. That's the community. They live together, some in their first year and some in their beginning in their second year. Each college is led by a tenured faculty member and has a variety of adults as well as a full range of undergraduate students.
Great. So I think, as we mentioned before, sometimes you go on the website and you see the price, and it's intimidating to a lot of students and their families. But it's important to do your research, because this is an area, as we mentioned, where there is a lot of variety in terms of funding opportunities. So every school has their own budget, and they determine how they will spend their budget. It oftentimes can be more competitive in terms of admission for international students if you apply for financial aid. So again, this is something that you need to do your research on before you ultimately decide which school you may want to apply to. And this is something to keep in mind before you submit the application. So we touched on some of these issues already about adjusting to life in the United States and the intercultural exchange and the value of that. And I would love for you just to talk about the timeline. Do students need a visa before applying? And also, what types of support systems are there for international students once they arrive on campus?
Okay, so let me start with the visa process. You don't need to worry about a visa until you've been accepted to a university in the United States. But once you get accepted, you will begin to get information about how to get your U.S. student visa, your F1 visa. Everybody's heard about I-20s. The school that admits you will send you an I-20. You are very fortunate here in the Kingdom to have an outstanding consular team at the U.S. Embassy. They are incredibly well organized. If you use their website, if you follow their points, going through the visa process is not very complicated. But the important thing is to apply early. So don't wait till the last minute. Don't wait till 3 days before you're supposed to be on campus. Give yourself at least a month, preferably maybe 2 months. And the second thing is to be organized about it. So on the embassy website, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things you need to do. Do all of those things. If you show up at the U.S. Embassy with all the proper documentations, the process will go very quickly. So it's not something to get too worried about. In terms of support for international students on American campuses, nearly all universities in the United States, universities and colleges, have something called the International Student Office. And there's 1 or 2 or a team of people there to help you with the regulatory aspects, the immigration aspects of getting to the United States, but to also help you settle in. So one of the things you want to do is attend orientations. They will send you links to websites, so read them. We try and be concise in what we send out, but it's really important for you to be prepared and read the materials that are sent to you prior to your arrival. I would also say that if you have the opportunity to attend pre-departure orientations here in Riyadh, you should do that. You get to hear from Saudi students who've been in the United States before, and it's an opportunity to really learn from them. Once you're on an American campus, there's really an abundance of resources in addition to the International Students Office. Of course, there are faculty and other administrative offices here to help all students. There are usually international student organizations. On many campuses, there's going to be an Arab student organization. On most campuses, there'll be a Muslim student association. So those are connections that certainly you can make when you get on campus, but you can also begin to make them after you've been admitted. Students at our colleges, the minute they know that someone's coming from their home country, they begin to email them and call them, and they'll come and visit you when they're home for summer. So you have an opportunity right from the point of accepting your offer to begin to get to know students on the campus that you're going to attend. The most important thing I would say, the most important piece of advice is there are going to be things that are unfamiliar to you. You're going to scratch your head and say, what are these Americans talking about? I don't understand how the classroom is working. I don't understand what's being presented at the dining hall. I don't understand how much time I have to move from here to there. The most important thing you can remember is ask questions. Because it's only by asking questions that you're going to really fully develop the skill set to make the most of this experience. This is the advice we give students when they arrive on campus. Some people are a little afraid to look like they don't know what's going on, but you really have to take the initiative and step up and ask. And there are lots of people who are willing to answer those questions.
Anne mentioned some of the resources available to you here in the Kingdom. At this point, I would love to invite Ms. Karen Bauer up to the podium to talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available to you through the U.S. Embassy and Education USA.
Hello and good evening. Once again, my name is Karen Bauer, and I'm the Senior Education Advisor here at the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. And I know that this has been a lot of information, and some of you are probably thinking, well, I've met a lot of colleges and universities, I have a lot of information, but where do I go from now? They're all going home, and I have to figure out where I'm going to apply and how I can get through the application process. And that's really where Education USA can step in and help you. And the good news is that we are here in Saudi Arabia. I am here in Riyadh with my colleague, Nada Adib. We have an advisor, Haneen Kamal, who's based at the U.S. Consulate in Jeddah. And we also have another advisor in Dhahran. And our whole goal and initiative is to help you learn about the application process and to navigate through that. And we do that in a number of different ways. And I'm going to explain some of those to you. But I'd also like to tell you that all of our services are free. We do not charge for anything. Education USA, and this is a network of offices worldwide, our goal is to help you choose the right fit for you. I know that we talked a lot about this evening, and it's really important that you find the right school for you. And with 4,000 colleges and universities, I can guarantee you there's probably a few places there for you, but we want to make sure that you arrive on campus happy and successful as a student. So how can we help you? Well, we have general information about the application process, and we provide information to students through in-person presentations given at the embassies and the consulates. And so you can come, and we will spend 1 hour talking about undergraduate, graduate, medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, MBA programs, distance learning. We have presentations for a number of different disciplines. So you can come and really learn about the ins and outs of the application process. We also give these same presentations through webinars. I don't know if you know what a webinar is, but it's basically an online meeting. So you can be at home, anywhere for that matter. You can be in Al Jof, you can be in Jazan, you can be in Riyadh, you can be anywhere sitting in front of your computer every Wednesday at 8:30 in the evening. As long as you have speakers and an internet connection and Adobe Flash, you can hear our presentation. And we do these all the time. We have information about standardized tests. I know that there's a lot of fear about taking the GRE, the GMAT, the TOEFL, maybe even the LSAT. We can help you find out where you can take these exams here in the kingdom, as well as institutions that can help you prep for these exams. I know that it can be extremely daunting when trying to figure out how you're going to put a study plan together. Believe me, it's daunting for a lot of American students as well. So know that you are not alone in this process. We also have pre-departure orientations. We do these for the King Abdullah Scholarship Program for all of the CASP students who have been admitted and given a scholarship to the United States. And in these presentations, we talk about what you need to know before you go, what to pack. We talk about the journey to the United States, port of entry procedure, and then we talk about what life is like once you arrive in the United States. We have consular officers that come to these presentations, so if you have specific visa questions, maybe about bringing your mahram along with you and what type of visa that they have to apply for, we're here to answer those for you as well. We're on Facebook and Twitter. You can find out about these events there. Our website, the U.S. Embassy website, has a wealth of resources that you can download in both Arabic and English. And we are very proud to present our new YouTube video called America 101. America 101 is an animation series. It's put together by a group of very creative and smart Saudi animators here in Riyadh. If you've heard of the series called Masamir, it's by the same animation company. And so it's the story of Nawaf in Turkey who decide that they want to go, they're friends, and they decide that they want to go to the United States to study. And so you can follow them on their journey and learn about things that you can do in the right way and maybe not the right way. So you can find links to those at our website, and you can also come to our booth. So please know that we are here for you. You probably noticed when they were giving the presentation that at the bottom of the screen, there was a quote that said, "Your guide to U.S. higher education." That's what Education USA is for you. I encourage you, after we finish this evening, that you come to our booth. We are booth 517. We have a whole staff there with iPads. And there is a survey that you can fill out, and you can leave us your email address. And we will then put you into our contact database and inform you of things that are happening in the near future. I would just like to say congratulations on even thinking about this process and going through it, and we're here to help you along the way, and please don't hesitate to contact us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bauer. First, next we would like to move on to the question and answer portion. In the remaining minutes, we'll take a handful of questions about admissions to U.S. colleges and universities. If you have school-specific questions, please also keep in mind that across all of our institutions, we spend a great deal of time thinking about ways to make our websites as useful as possible. There will be application tips on our websites. There will be all sorts of videos that you can watch to get a sense of what campus life is like. Certainly the application requirements, testing requirements, those are things that will be available on all of our websites and are easily accessible. It would be great if there are questions about selective admissions in general so that we can all sort of contribute our points of view. So does anyone have a particular question to start us off? Any questions? Wow, we did a good job answering all of the questions. Oh, yes, please, sir.
Hi, I wanted to ask about about studying the medicine in USA. I heard that there is a way to study any major before undergraduate major for 4 years and then study medicine after it. I don't get the idea. Could you explain it more, please?
Sure. Jordan, would you like to talk about how one might study medicine?
Sure. So in the United States, first students complete their bachelor degree. And as part of that bachelor degree, you're not specializing in medicine or law or any of those advanced degrees that have a separate admission process. So in the United States, students who want to be doctors have to complete a bachelor degree, and then they complete their medical schooling. So as a bachelor's degree student at an undergraduate level, you can study anything and be taking classes that prepare you for medical school. So you don't have to be a chemistry major or a biology major. You can study psychology or Russian literature or English or anything that you want, and at the same time be taking classes that will help prepare you for the process in medical school. Other things that students take advantage of at an undergraduate level who want to go on to medicine would include research. Medical schools would be excited about students that have experience in research, that have gained some practical knowledge and worked with faculty members, and also students that bring a certain amount of diversity in their academic interests. So it's sort of the opposite of what you might think, where students who want to go to medicine, most of them actually don't study things like biology or chemistry these days, simply because you can imagine that medical schools always get applications from students who focus on biology or chemistry. And so we encourage students at an undergraduate level to get a broader education so that when they go on to medical school and specialize at that time, that they have both the science foundation, but they also have different subjects and different areas of expertise that make them both a better medical school student, but also a different sort of candidate and more appealing to a medical school at that time. So at an undergraduate level, you can study really anything, and then you'll also take these science courses in preparation at the same time.
Great. Other questions?
I'd like to know about admission for graduate students in law schools, specifically LLM. And Like, what are the requirements, and are there specific tests required for LLM?
Great. So the question was about the LLM degree, and first I would just echo what Jordan just mentioned about law school, about medical school. For those of you who may be in secondary school now but ultimately want to pursue law, in the United States you get your law degree as a JD after your undergraduate degree, in the same way that you pursue your medical degree after your bachelor's degree. With the LLM, this is usually a one-year program for students who already hold a law degree, perhaps from their home country, because oftentimes these LLM programs are very international. They draw students from all over the world who want to get their master's at a U.S. law institution after they already have a degree in law from their undergraduate or postgraduate institution. So one thing to keep in mind is these programs are usually quite small and very competitive, and they will vary in terms of the requirements across institution, in terms of the tests that are required. But one thing that they do all have in common is that you must already have a law degree before applying. If you'd like some more information specifically about LLM programs at any of our schools, you can feel free to stop by afterwards. Thanks.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for this presentation. I would like to ask about the continuing education programs or short courses for those who are interested in enriching their learner process and development among career and for their own use.
Certainly. Joe?
Sure. This is a growing trend, and I think that many of us in our profession are just thrilled to see so many students take on these courses and these lectures purely for enrichment purposes. And I think that that's the biggest key word in this kind of movement, is that many of these courses are solely for you. So whether it's continuing education on site on our various campuses or online courses, Coursera is a really popular online website allowing these real world-renowned faculty to deliver lectures for free, available to I read one, it was over 100,000 students were taking this single course. So it's a fantastic learning opportunity, but really going back to the idea that enrichment is really what should be your key motivation. In terms of the admission or evaluation process, we typically don't view those courses in our overall evaluation conversations. It's going to be working on your English or learning about a new subject, and that may play well into your application. But in terms of these courses, they should be really self-motivated, and there are so many, and it's such an exciting growth field. So I think all of us in the next 5 or so years, we're going to really keep a close eye on continuing education and online courses.
Yes, I have just a few questions. Before that, I would like to thank you for your presentations and also welcome you here in Saudi Arabia. Regarding the English language test, what are really the I see here some IELTS, TOEFL. Any one of them is enough to satisfy the requirement of university, or some university asking for specific English tests? This is the first question.
Okay, so for our institutions, if the question refers to applications for undergraduate programs or even for graduate school programs, none of our institutions would allow either the IELTS or the TOEFL to stand alone, meaning that you can take that test and not a GMAT or not a GRE or not the SAT. So we use the IELTS or the TOEFL to get a sense of a student's ability to understand what we like to call idiomatic English, fast-speaking English that you would listen to in a classroom, conversations that you would have with peers outside of the classroom, and the pretty strong reading load that you would have for our respective institutions. But English language proficiency for our institutions is not the same thing as academic proficiency.
The second question, I heard Mr. Joe in the Stanford University, the admission is general, and at the end of the second year, the topics should be selected. Is this for all universities?
I think that's a really good question, and as Jake mentioned earlier, unfortunately, that's something you would have to research at each university. In general, I think one of the hallmarks of the American or U.S. higher education system is the ability to change your mind. I think so many young people go into a profession thinking that it's exactly what they want to do, and then they start the courses, and it's not what they want to do at all. So I think that each school and university is going to have their own regulations on how drastic can the change be, but it's definitely worth looking into. Some schools are completely open, and some schools, believe it or not, allow students to change all the way up until their last year of education. Some schools don't allow changes at all. But in general, it's worth looking into, and more times than not, I think you'll find that it is indeed a possibility at U.S. colleges and universities.
Okay. Can I apply for more than one field at a time?
That's a really interesting question. I think for schools, for some of the schools here that have separate undergraduate institutions for which you will have to submit one application but choose which school you're applying to, we're not admitting you to a particular major. And then when a student is studying within a particular school, oftentimes you can study more than one subject. Right? You can be a member of multiple departments. I would say that that might be, again, as my colleague said, unique to the institution that you're looking at. So if one wants that kind of flexibility, you should see if the curriculum at that institution allows for that kind of flexibility.
Yeah. I think if I could just I think all of our schools allow the possibility of what's called a double major, where you are pursuing two different fields at the same time. But I would just echo again that for those of you that might be in secondary school now, for all of our institutions, you should be keeping an open mind and be willing to explore different areas after you step foot on our campuses. And you had another question?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yes. Yes, please.
Hi, good evening. Thanks a lot for informative and interesting presentation, and we do appreciate this and hope you enjoyed your residency here in Riyadh. My question is, what's the specific criteria for admission to master and PhD programs in Harvard schools for medical and research innovation field?
Great. So in terms of graduate and PhD admissions, first we should all say that we all represent the undergraduate schools, undergraduate admissions offices. But I think you touched on an important point about research. All of our institutions have a large focus on research, as Jordan mentioned. And oftentimes it's really critical that you have significant research experience before you apply to graduate and PhD programs. It's very important to have great relationships with your professors during your bachelor's degree experience so that they can write on your behalf. And another important thing to consider now as you might be doing research into graduate and PhD programs is whether the institution you're applying to has a faculty member on its staff that is working in your area of interest. Because across the board at all of our schools, at the graduate and PhD level, you're working so very closely with faculty members that you want to make sure that there is someone who will be represented at the university that's correlated with your interests. The admissions procedures for graduate and PhD programs really do vary wildly depending on the field of study and the institution. So I would encourage you to go to the specific fields website across at each of our different schools to get more specific requirements. One thing I would say is that the faculty have a very significant input in the admissions process at the graduate and PhD level because they will be working with you so closely when you do decide, if you do decide to enroll. Yes, please.
Yes. Hi. First, I would like to thank you for giving us the chance to learn more about these elite universities. My question here is, from what I have heard, that each university, like Stanford, also Yale, and Bensylvania, and Columbia, and Harvard, are looking for a certain traits or characteristics. For I am a fresh graduate, so I'm talking here about an MBA programs. So if you can give us a piece of advice, or if you have anything or to learn about these characteristics or traits, each universities are looking for an MBA candidates.
So the MBA program is unique in the United States, again, with the study of business, where students are coming after they've had some substantial work experience, usually. So it's a strong preference in the United States that people apply to the MBA after they've had a chance to explore their career and then choose why the MBA will either help them in their future career and their future plans and goals, or help them change into a new career and evolve. But students have to have a very clear reason why this degree and why at this moment in their life. And I don't think that students always realize that. It's something that it's an enormous networking opportunity where you will be asked to bring experience and industry and perspective with you, along with your grades, your ability to contribute, but also your ability to work with others, I think becomes important. The GMAT is required for an MBA program, as well as personal statement and oftentimes interviews at an MBA level. So all of that is trying to get at why do you want to pursue this degree at this stage in your life, and what experience do you have already established that you're going to bring with you to contribute in the program.
I would just add that the international student perspective is very important in all of our MBA coursework and the MBA programs. At Yale, nearly 30% of our MBA students come from outside the United States, so getting a good mix of representation in that class is something also that the schools look for.
Let me add just one other piece in terms of what undergraduate study tends to be popular at business schools. I think for business schools like the ones represented here, a significant percentage of students are not studying business or economics as they apply to our schools. Again, going back to that idea of what specifically does one want to do with an MBA.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Hello. Thank you all for being here, and we all appreciate answering our questions. Well, I want to ask about postgraduate program, master and PhD. I would like to know if my chances applying for postgraduate program is higher than undergrad, or same, or maybe lower, I don't know. Other than this, what are the things that I should keep in mind before applying to this program, rather than what you have mentioned? For example, the interviews, any other measures that you recommend that we should consider in mind before applying? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that just to go back on what Jake said, and I won't take too much time, but PhD programs in particular are so varied and so specialized that it would be really ill-advised of us to sit up here and talk about how competitive some are versus others. So I unfortunately must really urge you to research into specific schools and specific programs and contact those departments directly. I can tell you just based on personal knowledge that there are departments at Stanford, some years they have funding for 10 new PhD students, and some year funding for 0. And really it's so variable, so I think just looking into specific departments that interest you is really your best starting point from here.
I would add that certainly for the PhD programs at our schools and many others, that the GRE is required.
Excuse me. Another question, please. I read in the website of Harvard that there are 2 Harvard Summer School and also the Adults and Professionals courses. Could you please elaborate on this? And do you think it's a good idea to start this before taking the experience of a master's degree?
Yeah, Thank you for that question.
Yes, please. And after many years of being away from studying and being busy with career, you know?
Certainly.
Thank you so much.
Certainly. I first would echo what Joe mentioned about some of the enrichment opportunities through distance learning, EDX courses, Coursera, things like that are online courses. But oftentimes you can get the same sort of exposure to the Harvard educational experience, the liberal arts curriculum, the teaching style of professors at universities such as ours through summer programs. There is one at Harvard. I think many of our institutions here will have programs available to students to do over the summer, including students that may have had gone off into the workforce, have had a family, and then decided that maybe I want to have a different type of experience or get exposure to a different educational field. And that's definitely an option. Harvard Summer School, students take classes with Harvard faculty. You have the option of living in Harvard facilities in the dormitories. And the idea is that you basically get a snapshot of the Harvard experience. Again, have the opportunity to form a connection with a faculty member in your area of interest. So it's a great opportunity to pursue some of those interests that you might have. I would say that it doesn't, for those of you who are secondary school students, attending Harvard Summer School does not give you an advantage in the admissions process. But again, it will be a fantastic opportunity to give you a taste or a flavor of what attending an institution like Harvard might be like. Yes.
السلام عليكم. هل في أحد يتحدث اللغة العربية؟ اللغة العربية. أطلب الجهاز اللي عندهم ممكن يتوفر لكم بعكس إحنا. ففي جهاز مترجم فإحنا ما استفدنا من هذه المؤتمر. ففي جهاز مترجم لو توفر لكم راح نتحدث معكم أفضل.
If someone could translate, that would be fantastic.
I think that's something that he's going to have to ask the session organizers for, if they can offer a translation in Arabic. That is not something that we can do.
Okay. Any other questions?
There's a question all the way back there.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering for people who, I'm a secondary student, and I was just wondering if one wants to apply for engineering and then later on want to pursue in business, for MBA in your schools, do you think it's a good idea for someone to apply for MBA when they have a different undergraduate degree, or should it be all business based?
I think that's that cuts right to the chase of why you might be interested in a school like this, because it's not necessary, as Alec mentioned, to be, laser focused, solely focused on economics. And then if you're interested in an MBA, we really strongly encourage you to really just explore your passions, keep an open mind when you enroll in a school such as ours, and really let that be your guide, knowing that, yes, you should probably take an economics class every so often to make sure that might be your long-term ambition, but it's not necessary. If you think that having a basis in engineering is something that might be beneficial to you and interesting to you, certainly we encourage you to go with that before applying for an MBA later on, if that's where your plans ultimately take you.
So you do encourage having a different undergraduate degree than what you want to get in a graduate degree?
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
I think, just to expand on that just a little bit, I think we can all give examples of students who've studied everything from the humanities, the social sciences, engineering and applied sciences, the arts, who've gone on to MBA programs at our respective institutions. So again, part of what I mentioned about the liberal arts is that what you do and what you study as an undergraduate might have nothing to do with what your career winds up being. And I think that that's something very important to keep in mind.
Or the exciting thing could happen where you're studying engineering as an undergraduate and you get to take a few business courses or economics courses along the way, and then you find that you don't even need the MBA. And so then you've saved yourself a lot of time and money because you've already sort of built that experience as an undergraduate.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm here. Yeah, I have three questions. The first one is, could you please tell us a little bit about selectivity, common application, and OPT?
Sure. So I guess we'll take your questions one by one. So the first was about selectivity.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing to keep in your mind because, as we mentioned about things to consider, the reality is all of these institutions are highly, highly selective. And the fact of the matter is there aren't really that many people around the world that can say, I have a great chance of getting into Harvard or Yale or Penn or Stanford or Columbia. The reality is the competition is so steep, the interest extends around the world. We have some of the best and brightest applying to our schools. So the best you can do is give it your best shot, be thoughtful in your application, and see what happens, realizing that all of these institutions are incredibly selective. There is variability that varies across institutions. So this is where it's very important to do your research. I think this is a great area where Education USA can be very helpful in pointing you in the right direction, making sure that you're applying to a range of schools. The second question was about the common application?
Yes.
Yes. And I believe all of our institutions here, all 5 of us, take the common application. So for those of you that aren't familiar, this is a standard application. So it allows you to prepare one application and send it to all of the schools if you so choose, keeping in mind that each school may also ask you to submit additional information through what are usually called supplementary forms or a supplement. On the supplement, that's where the schools can really start to ask questions that they think are important based on the needs of their particular school. A lot of this is done online now. So you can submit most of your documents through online. The common application will be available starting in the summertime. So in terms of the timeline, you might take a look at later on in the summer, see what kinds of questions are being asked, and start to think about the things that you need to prepare. And what was the third question?
OPT program.
Optional practical training?
Yeah.
Okay, so for students who come to the United States on F1 student visas, there's the opportunity to work in a field related to your studies, mostly after you complete the studies, and that's called optional practical training, or OPT. For most students, that's going to be a period of 12 months. For a small number of students, it's going to be longer than that. If you're in there's several criteria, but if you're a STEM student and working for a particular kind of employer. So so many students will use OPT as a way to sort of put a capstone on their educational experience, to get a little work experience in the United States before returning home or before going on to graduate school.
Yeah. Can I ask one last question? Yeah. Do you publish the average GRE score of the admitted applicants?
We publish the average scores for the admitted applicants.
Yeah, the average GRE score.
This is for graduate level. This would be something that, again, at the graduate level, so much depends on the specific field and the particular area of study, because their admissions processes are pretty independent from field to field. From department to department. At the undergraduate level, there are many, many ways to categorize what types of scores, average scores, a range of scores. The most important thing to consider is that we're looking at you in your particular context of your school, most importantly, and what your grades are. We want to see that you've challenged yourself, that you've taken challenging classes, that you performed at really the best of your ability. We're not going to cut off at a particular GPA and not look at the rest of your application. We look at your transcript to see that, 1, you've taken challenging classes, and 2, that you've done well in those classes. The standardized test scores come in to fill out the picture, give us a sense of your academics in a different way. Again, it's not really helpful to think in terms of cutoffs. You just need to give it your best shot, prepare, do as best as you can. And I would say the same thing goes for the other professional tests at the professional level, such as a GRE. Maybe we have time for a few more questions. A lot of us are actually headed back to the United States pretty soon, so we wanted to just squeeze in a few more questions before we complete.
Jake, just one point of clarification. The common application that he was talking about is only for undergraduate. So you wouldn't submit that for graduate programs, but it is used by undergraduate study for over 500 institutions around the United States and some around the world.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Yes, please. Regarding the OPT, if the graduate proved himself or herself in the job that he had or she had, after the 12 months or more that it's the OPT validity, what if he's a candidate to be a member of the, if the institute he is working in is interested to have him as a staff on the long term, what's the procedure? You get my question?
Absolutely. So the question is, if you want to continue to work for the organization that you're working for under OPT, what's the process? What's the procedure?
Thank you so much.
It's not a short explanation, so I'm just going to say that in some instances it is possible to use another temporary non-immigrant visa. It depends on the kind of organization you're working for, and sometimes it depends on the state of the economy and the number of international students and international individuals seeking to work temporarily in the United States. But it is within the realm of possibilities, and you want to work closely with your employer to make that happen.
Great. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions.
Excuse me?
Hello?
Yes. Excuse me. I read that Stanford University used to accept only male students. How about the situation now? Do you take the gender of the applicant into consideration?
Sorry, if you could just...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear just the first part of your question.
I read that Stanford University used to accept only male students. How about the situation now? Do you take the gender of the applicant into consideration?
Yeah, actually, Stanford is unique. We've been co-educational since our founding. So I'm sorry for that misinformation. But yeah, since 1891, we've admitted both men and women. But let me just broaden your question a little bit and talk about how gender may play into the evaluation process. I think in all of our cases, and in many of the cases of universities around the United States, we're looking